You are listening to the Unleashed and Aligned podcast, where we strip away the noise, unleash our truth, and align with our highest self. Welcome to our special October theme podcast. Today we have a special guest, Tabitha, who has been a priestess in the Georgian tradition of Wicca for over 25 years. She is a priestess of the Silver Spiral Coven. She is also a druid in the Order of Bards, Ovates, and Druids, and knows enough heathenry to teach runes. Tabitha is retired military and served as a distinguished faith group leader in Iraq. That means she was officially acknowledged as clergy as a third-degree priestess who could hold public Wiccan classes, circles, and sabbats. She started the Facebook group Would-Be Witches, Wiccans, Heathens, Druids, Pagans, and Exploring, the initials that spell out WHDPE, almost spelling would be. She can also be found on Facebook, Blue Sky, and Substack, and we will link all of her information into the show notes along with her book recommendations if you are seeking to explore more Wiccan traditions. And now I welcome Tabitha Peshawa to the podcast in this special witchy October episode. Welcome to the podcast, Tabitha. Thank you for being here. And to get started, I would love to know, for those who may not be familiar, what does it mean to be a Georgian priestess, and how does it differ from other Wiccan traditions?
First off, I've been a priestess in the Georgian tradition of Wicca since, oh my goodness, about 2001. So for a day or two. The Georgian tradition it's British traditional witchcraft derived, which means the people who were starting this back in the early 70s were pulling their information from Gardnerian Wicca and Alexandrian Wicca, but also other sources that are not British traditional witchcraft, like the New England Covenants of Traditional Witchcraft, NECTW. And honestly, in the early 70s, you got whatever information you could from anywhere you could. And it all went into the very vibrant pot of let's see what works and keep the things that works for us. And then let other people continue working their own traditions. And so that's why I refer to it as American eclectic witchcraft.
Okay.
So how does it differ from other Wiccan traditions? We do honor, it's honestly, we're a lot alike, a lot of other Wiccan traditions. We honor God and Goddess in our practices. We may draw on different pantheons for different rituals at different times of year. We work with the Wheel of the Year. I would say that there are far more similarities than there are differences with other Wiccan traditions.
So, what first drew you to Wicca, and what has your personal journey into becoming a priestess, what does that look like?
So I read a book. My first journey into practically everything is I read a book. And in this case, it was a fictional book by Mercedes Lackey, who had a Wiccan priestess, the main character. And I was like, I know that whatever she's writing about is something that is good and positive and wholesome because I've read so many books by Misty. So I started searching for Wicca. And then I read Drawing Down the Moon by Margot Adler. And I felt like these people that I haven't even met yet, they get me. They completely understand where I'm coming from. And so I did a self-dedication, and then I started looking around in my environment. So I was a college student at the time. This was 1991. And I found the Pagan Culture and Spirit Web at University of Washington. And it was a group of all kinds of different pagan traditions. So we had Wiccans and Druids and heathens and ceremonial magicians. And there are just, I didn't even really understand the full vibrancy of the community. I just knew that I had found my people and I wanted to be part of it. And then the Seattle community at that time, and I think they still do today, was offering community full moons. And so I started attending the community full moons. And the way it was set up was a different group would lead each different month. And so after attending for about a year, I helped with the organization. And I would network and I contact whoever was next on the list to say, hey, you're up. And so I really got to know a lot of people in the Seattle community that way. And then when I was ready to deepen my practice and when I wanted to get past the I read a book phase, I walked up to someone at the end of random pagan workshop in the Seattle community. And I had recognized her voice from talking to her on the phone. And so I walked up and I said, you know anyone who is taking on students right now? And she said, yes, she did. But she was. And so that's when I started working with Zanoni and started my practice. I went through the Wicca first and second degree material, pretty much like attending college classes. I would go to her house, we would go through the material, she would give me reading material, and then I would come back later having done my homework, or sometimes not. And we would talk about it and we would move on to the next lesson. And then I finished college and joined the Navy because that's what my life was. And so I was a military pagan with second degree training in Wicca. And I did that for a lot of years. And I was on 3 different ships. And then coming back from that third ship, I was able to do a lateral transfer into the Civil Engineer Corps around the time that I was leaving the surface warfare community and I was finally back on shore duty. I was able to work on the third degree training in Wicca and become a fully acknowledged priestess. So when I was on my third ship, I went to the chaplain and said, hey, I want to lead stuff because I'm completely out of the broom closet at this point, and that's how I wanted to be. And so they said, okay, you're not a priestess. You don't meet the requirements for a distinguished faith group leader,
Mm.
which is full clergy. That's not a chaplain in the military. And so I did that on my third ship on the Abraham Lincoln. And every time we got underway, I would offer some class, I would lead something. And that was pretty cool. I was really grateful for that experience. And then many years later, when I was an individual augmentee in Iraq, having, of course, by that time gotten my third degree and being a full priestess, I knew exactly what paperwork I needed in order to be a distinguished faith group leader while I was in country. And so I am acknowledged as a pagan priestess by the US military, although their phrasing is distinguished faith group leader. And I've led circles in Iraq and I've done initiations and I've trained people. I've got a bunch of second degree students right now who will be doing the initiations at the end of the month. So my journey spans literally decades and it has been awesome.
That is so incredible. I kind of want to touch on something you said earlier. So when you talked about the community full moons, I'm curious as to what that is and what it looks like. If you could elaborate a little bit on what would it be if you showed up to something like that? What happens?
So if you show up to any kind of a community gathering, whether it's a community full moon or a community sabbat or a ritual at a pagan pride day. Actually, let's start with pagan pride day as a potential entry point. Pagan pride day looks a lot like a festival. There will often be a class or 2 or 3, and there may be vendors there. It's just a great opportunity for people who are already in the community to meet each other and socialize and for new people to come in. There is almost always at least one ritual. So when we've done Pagan Pride on the island, we've done an opening ritual and a closing ritual for the bookends for the day. I've also seen this in North Carolina, in Seattle, in other communities where I've attended these, and in the DC area. And so the ritual structure looks like we're establishing sacred space. I cast the circle, and there's often someone walking around the outer perimeter of the group. So you got everyone standing in the circle, someone walking around the outside and saying words that may sound a little bit like, I cast this circle that it may be a barrier between the realms of men and the realms of the mighty ones, a protection and boundary that shall contain within it the power that is raised this day. That's fairly close to, it's never Nothing in Wicca is ever universal, but it's fairly commonly used. And then the acknowledgement of the quarters, so facing the east, then usually we go in the circle. Other traditions may go cross quarters, but usually you start in the east and you invoke the spirits of the east, spirits of the south, spirits of the west, spirits of the north. And the different traditions will have different elemental associations. British traditional witchcraft, you're honoring air and spirits of air in the east, fire in the south, water in the west, and then earth in the north. If you live on the East Coast, you may want to put water in the east because you're right next to the Atlantic Ocean. And that's okay, because tailoring this to your personal practice where the directions make sense actually really deepens your practice, whether it be a personal practice or as a coven, as a group, focusing in how you're going to do the work together. And then in the middle of that ritual, there is usually the point of the whole exercise. You want to invoke the divine. I call upon God and Goddess. I call upon Mother Earth. I call upon Father Sky. It may be broadly non denominational like that, or it may be really very specific. I call upon Carnena and Aradia. Either way, whether you're hearing it as a general or as a specific, tends to do acknowledgement of masculine and feminine principles. Not every tradition is binary. There are certainly masculine oriented, usually associated with the gay communities, but not exclusively gay. There are feminine, often the Dianic traditions that may or may not be specifically lesbian, those separating out and giving people the space they needed to experience their identity as sacred and divine. That happened a lot. Then they created their own traditions, and that's beautiful. But in public, if it's Wicca centric, will often be honoring masculine and feminine. It is not meant to be exclusionary. Okay. So if you are going to a community full moon, you're going to see that same ritual structure. If you're going to a public Sabbath, you're going to see that same ritual structure. And then once you're inside this sacred container, and once you have invited the guests that you want to have a conversation with, then the work of the event begins. And so we are very close to Hallows at this point, to Halloween, to Samhain, Samhain. Does not look at all like Samhain, Samhain. But what do we do at a Samhain circle? One of the most common things is that we will honor our ancestors. And so you'll often see an ancestral altar set up and the celebration of our beloved dead. And so I will bring out the picture of my grandmother and maybe a crochet needle or something that she actually crocheted. I will also honor my upline within the craft. I will honor Zanoni. I will honor Gerald Gardner and Lady Gwyn from NECTW and Newen from my Druid practices from the Order of Bards, Ovates, and Druids. And I arrange all of these in a pleasing manner, and I will put a candle in front of them. I'm happy to have the wisdom that you have passed on. And if there is any wisdom that you can bring to me from the other side, I am open to that conversation. And so the rest of the year, we're not necessarily, that sounds a lot like ancestral worship.
Yes.
We focus on that in October. That's not necessarily what we do the rest of the year. A lot of Wicca is focused on the wheel of the year and the agricultural cycles. And so once again, tailoring to your environment is a wonderful thing. So right now we're going into the dark time of the year. The days are getting shorter. We're anticipating the gift sharing season of Yule. We're anticipating the reemergence of the light at Imbolc and the beginning of the planting season. When you get into spring, there's a lot of the rituals focus on the planting of seeds and what do you want to begin in your life. And then watching that as it goes through the fertility festivals around the 1st of May at Beltane. Everything is in bloom, and you've got the most light possible at the summer solstice. And then you go into your harvest festivals in August and in September. So what is done inside of the circle definitely changes from event to event.
Okay. Thank you for that description. I love it. Can you describe a little bit if there's a short description of what it looks like to be like first degree, second degree, third degree?
Absolutely. Okay. So people who are interested in the craft that are just newbies, they're looking around. That's great. That's where we all start from. At some point, you're like, oh, this specific thing looks interesting. And so if you are fortunate enough to have a coven in the area that is open to training people, then you approach them, you say you're interested. There's probably going to be some kind of meeting that is nowhere near where the Coveners live, so they can get to meet you and make sure that you're a good person, and where you also get to form your opinions of them. If you get any warning signs at this stage, listen to your intuition. That's very important and something we all emphasize. And also, this is a religion, not a cult.
Mhm.
So once you start training, then at some point they'll say, okay, either do a self dedication ritual or we'll bring you through a dedication ritual. And so there's a training period where you learn the basics of how to cast a circle, create sacred space, what the wheel of the year is, and some really basic spellcraft, really basic correspondences. And then at the end of that training, there's an initiation. And saying that someone is a first degree initiate is acknowledging that they know the basics.
Okay.
And so the way that Zanoni organized her training material, and I've also used this as I've continued to teach in the Georgian material. I admit I started this as a college student. She had it arranged like a college class. So there were lessons, and you would go through the different lessons in order to, okay, now you know the basics. When you start working with a second degree material, you're all at that point, you're comfortable in circle. You can call quarters. You've done the meditations to have the interactions with the elemental spirits, elemental guides. And now it's time to get a more intimate relationship with the divine, however you perceive it, and a more intimate relationship with other powers out there in the universe. And so, what I've been taking my second degree students through over the last 7 months or so is doing the planetary rites. And so actual contact with planetary energies. And we'll do one class where we do a planetary rite. And then the next class, 2 weeks later, we do the astrology of that particular planet. And then you move on to the next and on to the next. This is also where you get your first experience with drawing down. And what that means is actually channeling, allowing deity or other spirit you already know to come in and speak with your voice, move your hands, move your body. This is not specific just to Wicca, but it is a part of the training material while you're working towards second degree. So when you say someone is a second degree Wiccan, the assumption is that they know how to do all of these things. They've experienced them at least once. When someone comes back and, all right, I'm ready for third degree, I want to start the training for third degree, what they're saying is, I want to be clergy. I want to lead. I want to run my own group or coven. And then that training is focused on how do you work within group interactions? And there's a lot of leadership things that I pass on at that point. And so there's also like a second degree can initiate someone to first. The third degree can initiate someone to second or to first. And so the passing down of the line. But third degree really means that you are ready to be out there in the world, public or not public, as your own common sense dictates, but you're ready to lead and you're ready to counsel.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that description. And would you consider when you're I was gonna ask you about drawing down. Would you consider it channeling? Like when somebody says I'm channeling, or I can't remember what the writing is, but when they're like writing from like source or spirit, is that
Automatic writing. Yeah.
yeah, automatic?
I would say yes, drawing down absolutely is channeling. But the way that we use it, you're not trying to channel your grandmother or ancestral spirits. You are contacting the divine, or you are contacting specific spirits in order to allow them to express themselves through you.
Okay.
And there's different levels. So sometimes it can feel like they're standing beside you, or standing like just behind your shoulder. They can whisper in your ear and you can repeat their words. Sometimes it feels like they're half in, half out. So maybe you're allowing them to speak in your voice, but you're not moving around the room. Sometimes the aura around the body changes. The way the person holds themselves is completely different. You look at them and you are no longer seeing Becky. You are seeing Freya. I have seen women carrying gods that you had no idea it was a female body underneath. I mean, it was Odin, and Odin was fully present. And I could feel when he was looking at me and when he was looking at the person across the room. It was incredible. I had no idea that it was Diana Paxson who was carrying Odin in that moment because it wasn't relevant.
That's awesome. And my last question from what you had shared is within that experience when you were in the military doing the circles that you had done in different countries, is there an experience that really sticks out in your mind that you're like, oh my gosh, this is crazy or this was amazing? Is there a specific one?
Oh, there are so many. It's decades of experience. And the things that stand out, honestly, all of the experience of ecstasy and this went well. You lead the Samhain circle and you lead the meditation for ancestral contact. People come out of that experience. You can see someone has tears running down their face,
Mm.
and you know that they're getting a good contact, and you're just holding the sacred space where they can get the experience that they need for their own personal growth and development. That's amazing. And so I would say the thread that calls me to be a priestess is the opportunity to help other people in their own personal growth
Oh,
through teaching or through their contacts in meditation or through introducing them to the divine. The first time someone does a drawing down, what you're seeing on the outside looks very wooden. Inside their brain, they're so busy and there's so much going on. And you just know that they've got a real contact because the way they're acting is often very wooden. And then they grow through that. And then the next time they do it, it's a little more fluid. And the next time they do it, they're like, that was amazing. And I just love the expressions of not just joy, but also doing the shadow work. The young man who came to me in Iraq because he was having dreams of his own death and he knew how he was going to die. And I hope the words that I said helped. What I was trying to do was offer him a framework where this could be an opportunity to make peace
mm,
with anyone that he needed to make peace with before the end. The truth is the what is not set in stone. And so having the dream gives you the opportunity to analyze and figure out what the warning is so that you can change something. What's the small change that's going to result in you not being on the road that night?
right.
What's the small change that's going to result in? Let me start with the story that my dad used many times. He had dreams. He worked as an engineering tech. And so he would test asphalt. And so there would often be a pot on the stove that they were heating up that had asphalt in it.
Mm,
And he had a dream where one of the engineers came through the lab in a big hurry and bounced off of the stove, and the handle of the pot was sticking out. He knocked the pot of asphalt onto himself and was really badly burned. And Dad had this dream more than 3 or 4 times. And so Dad got in the habit of always making sure every pot handle was rotated inward, no matter when he saw it,
mm,
because that's the small change.
yeah.
And then one day he is in the lab and he's talking to the same guy he was talking to in the dream. And the door opens and the engineer comes rushing through and bounces off of the stove. But Dad had turned the handle of the pot inward. And the engineer bounces off of the stove and goes about his business. And his day is not ruined and he has no scars. And so, as assessing the dreams and assessing the precognition and figuring out what's the small change. It is actionable information. It's why it's sent to us.
Yeah. Wow, that's incredible. So many people hear the word witch and immediately think of pop culture stereotypes. What are some of the biggest misconceptions about Wicca or spellcasting, or maybe both, that you would like to clear up?
A lot of people lean into the word witch to reclaim their power. And there's a great song out there, Woman in Total Control of Herself. That's hilarious. And I love it because it spells witch. And
Yeah.
also, it's a good song. So I grew up, I came into Wicca in the early 90s. There was a bit of satanic panic then. We are definitely entering into another time frame where there's a lot of, whether we call it satanic panic or call it something else, but a lot of people making horrible judgments about folks who are not Christian. And it doesn't matter to them if you're a witch, if you're Wiccan, if you're heathen, if you're druid, if you're a magician, or if you just play Dungeons and Dragons or any other role playing games. There are judgmental people out there who are seeking to control us by telling us that if we're these things, then we're bad. We're not
Right.
bad. We are genuine human beings who are seeking to make sense of the universe and the things that are happening around us. And we are choosing to experience the world as something that is vibrant and alive, where everything has its own spirit, maybe not intelligence. I won't go so far just to say that the lavender plant in my garden has its own intelligence, but I will say that it does have the ability to recognize predators and to defend itself against predators and the insects that come and want to eat the leaves, et cetera, et cetera. And so it has a response to its environment that we are just now beginning to understand. Yes, I am Wiccan. I'm a witch. I'm an animist. I'm a polytheist. I believe in many gods. It makes way more sense to me that there are so many aspects of the divine, so many gods and goddesses out there that we can commune with and talk to, and that their goals don't always align, and that they can have their own challenging discussions. And so the popular stereotype that every witch is a bad witch is incorrect, or that every Wiccan the is like every other Wiccan. No, we're this wonderful rainbow of different ways of perceiving the universe. And a lot of us come into this because we are psychic and we perceive things in reality that we've been told don't exist. And so we look for other people who tell us, yes, we have had similar experiences and we know that this is also real.
Yeah. So when you teach spellcasting, what are some of the fundamental principles that you emphasize for beginners and things that are essential to understand before ever even attempting to cast any kind of spells?
The first thing is ethics. Am I a good witch or am I a bad witch? I'm in the good witch category, and ethics is really important to me. Is it possible to cast a love spell in an ethical way? Yes. Make yourself more desirable. Make yourself more open to romantic opportunities. Find ways to help you put yourself into places where you can meet your Mr. or Mrs. Right. Help yourself with discernment so that you will recognize when someone is Mr. or Mrs. Wrong. These are all great ways to focus your love spells. When you're doing a love spell that is specific, that I want Joe to want me, that is messing with someone else as well. And that's not okay. And I have seen it done to devastating effect on other people. And so my this is not okay comes from School of Hard Knocks and seeing other people badly impacted by it. Whenever I near a random name, because I honestly don't know the name of the person, I get this really bad headache.
Yeah.
And I think they might be trying to cast a spell on me and they're acting weird. Like they want me to they're acting weird around me and I don't like it. I've seen that too. So I teach ethics and I teach what to watch out for. This is a religion, not a cult. I go through water signs of a cult. Sorry, I don't have my cheat sheet in front of me for water signs of a cult. You can Google that. I lean in on divination. So from the very first class, there is the draw a card and see if you can figure out how that particular tarot card relates to your day or your week. And by the time you get through the first degree training, you're pretty comfortable that you understand the meanings of all the tarot cards because we've done a lot of work with tarot. We've done a lot of work with the elements and how they show up in tarot. We've done a lot of work with numerology and how these things overlay into the symbolism. The first degree training, there is a lot of air associated with thought and discernment and breath work and how you express yourself in the world, whether it's spoken or singing or otherwise. You go through all of that, but you also look at the elements of personality and water, air like traits. So that's some of the foundational things. And when you are ready to start doing spell work, you should understand the correspondences with all of the elements. So you want to do a spell to get a better job. And so you want to bring in all of the elements into this. And so maybe you're working with green candles because you want to bring the money aspect into it. And then you've got a field you want to work in. And how can you make, let's bring something that's a symbol of that? Maybe put that onto the candle or put that onto the altar. So bringing in all of the different elements in order to have layers in your spell and not just I lit a green candle, but I lit a green candle where I had created the sigils that represent the following things. I had an oil with these three herbs where the oil is infused with the herbs, and that's what I dressed the candle with. And it's a big candle, and I'm going to light it for 10 days in a row and let it burn while I chant something. So it's not just one thing, it's a layer of things. And doing this in layers and doing this with symbols and symbology that means something to your deep mind means that your subconscious gets engaged in helping draw the opportunity to you and also helping you recognize it.
How would you describe differing from spell casting to manifestation? The intention is there, and that's what I see in spell casting. Like, that intention has to be there. And then you're adding elements, which maybe you do or don't in manifestation, but you're adding these elements that have a specific intention for whatever you're trying to bring in. And then it's helping you to get in that mindset, like you said, the subconscious getting into that zone, which I feel like is part of quote unquote manifestation, which I feel like they're very similar and have similar
Yes.
aspects. So I'm just curious of your thoughts between the two.
So, absolutely, the point of spell work is manifestation. You can also do spell work for your own personal growth. But I would also say that I was raised in an environment with a grandmother who she was so good. She'd pray for you and it would help. And her prayers, you felt like God was actually listening to her. And you'd try to bring her, Grandma, pray for me for something dumb. And she'd tell you it was something dumb. But she would always pray for you to get the best things for you and the keeping things positive and that was one of the things that I learned a lot of things from my incredibly Christian grandmother. But one of them is keep it positive, and another is the trust your intuition. And a third is the spirits are really there. When you sense something, trust that you are right. She would say, "Oh, your cousin really is struggling with something today. I don't know what it is, but I got to go pray for him because I can feel him standing behind me." She would find out later and she'd go, "Oh, I talked to your aunt and now I know that your cousin's going through blah, blah, blah."
Yeah.
And so we got the feedback of not only did she notice, but she followed through and did something, and she followed through and found out the specifics. And then she let us know. And that's maybe not scientific method per se, but the applying that type of intelligence to the entire process.
Yeah.
There's something I want to manifest. How am I going to go about doing it? Write down the things that I used, write down how often I did it. There's journaling on some level can be incredibly useful. Not every, it doesn't work for everyone, but it's been incredibly useful to me to do the journaling. and then look back and see, did it work? Okay, if
Yeah.
it didn't work, then what am I going to try next time? Or I got another full moon coming up, still looking for that job. How am I going to refocus? And maybe I'm being too specific. Maybe I need to be a little more open to all of the possibilities that are out there and not just what my degree is in. And there's this amazing person that I'm going to meet and be business partners with, but they're not ready yet.
Yeah. So mention that doing that scientific analytical process of evaluating what you did that maybe worked and what you did that didn't and tweaking it in your favor because I completely believe in that. And I think that with what I'm hearing about spell casting, it can definitely help call in or out or whatever that you're trying to do in a almost like more specific way within the ritual of however
The,
you do that.
the thing I would add into that is when you are in the middle of doing the work, whether it's a trance work, meditative work, doing the actual spell, actually praying, if that's what the way that your practice lends to, then keep the analytical mind out of the way when you're in the middle of it. That's not the role of the analytical mind. Getting into the flow, getting into the trance, saying the words over and over again until you can just feel the power flowing through you. That's the point. And then let the analytical mind engage later after the work is done.
Yes, I love that you said that because I was thinking that in my head, but I didn't speak it out loud. I agree with you. It's once you start bringing that element in, things get jumbled in my head. And I'm like, I don't know if it's me or if it's my brain. And once I feel that, I'm like, I'm out of that sync and out of that like manifesting state. It's like now my brain's taking over. But yeah, completely agree. Is like going through the process, like writing it out. And then at the end saying, okay, what worked or what didn't. So, how do the cycles of nature, like moon phases, seasons, or elements, and you touched on this a little bit earlier too, how does that play into Wicca practices or spell work?
I didn't talk at all about the moon phases. The new moon, when you see the first crescent, is a great time for beginnings and the inception of things, and also a good time for purification and clearing things out of the way. And then as the moon grows, you continue to do magic that is focused on growth. And you get to the full moon and you can focus your magic on, there's so many things we do at the full moon, but the expectation of bringing things into being. And
Mm.
also, a lot of divination works really well at the full moon. If you ever walked outside when the moon is full, like to the point where you can see color, but
Mhm.
it's still night. It's such a wonderful time for being open to divination. And I think that's why a lot of our divinatory practices focus in on the full of the moon. My favorite time to do magic, me personally, is when moon and sun are both in the sky, both just barely above the horizon. So, slightly sunset just before the full of the moon, or sunrise just after the full of the moon. So, the day before, the day after. I get this wonderful liminal space of balance and a couple of opportunities to engage with it every month. And then as the moon begins to wane, you shift your focus so that it becomes a letting go rather than a drawing in. So if I focus on weight loss, then as the moon is increasing, I'm going to focus on healthy habits and increasing the amount of exercise. And then when the moon is waning and growing thinner, I do the focus on weight loss specifically. If I'm trying to do magic for getting a job at the waxing of the moon as it grows fuller, it's looking for the opportunities. The full of the moon is nailing the interviews, and the waning moon is figuring out the bad habits that will not serve me well in the workplace. And what things do I need to remove from, not emphasize? What are the things that I need to spend more time improving? So look up where the moon phase is. Can I wait until next week when the moon is in the proper phase? Or do I just rephrase so that the way I cast my spell, the things that I'm spelling out, are in alignment with the moon phase? And both approaches work really well. We acknowledge similarly with the seasons, like I was talking about before, but you don't want to wait until March to plant a seed. So you can do this first thing in the morning at dawn. You can do this when the moon is waxing, or if it happens to be spring when you have a need, you're like, woo, woo, this is easy now, and go with that flow. The dark of the moon is definitely a time for release, for leaving things behind. There's a lot of folks, like specifically, there's some new moon and full moon practices that are very specific with her worship. It can get to the point where it's really culturally dependent on which mythology you're digging into. But those are the general rules. And then the elements, the earth, air, fire, water, these are really broad categories that we use in our symbolism, and they're helpful, they're useful, but they play more of a role in spell work. They're a core part of creating sacred space.
Mm. Thank you. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like when the moon is full, it would be more of the like, this could be broader categories, but I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. So, like the full of the moon, or as it's getting full, is more like if you're thinking about internal work, it'd be more of your growth
Yes.
work. And then the waning is more of the shadow work and maybe the darker. Okay. Okay. I love that. That's amazing. So, I don't know if maybe traditional astrology at all comes into play. But from our last talk, when we were talking about the moon and stuff and calling in the elements, and I started when I see the full moon, or even if the moon is big and bright in the sky, I like to call in that element because I have a Leo sun and a Leo moon. And I don't know if that has anything to do with any kind of traditional stuff. But I was curious if there's any aspect of kind of the traditional astrology within Wicca at all, or is that something totally different?
So there's the religious practice of Wicca, and then there's the various technologies that different people have different levels of skill in.
Mm,
Practicing astrology is a skill. I can read a natal chart, but I'm not good enough to be a professional. I can't do the predictive work of astrology because I haven't put the time into studying it yet. To be fair, I have a day job and I'm teaching, and I don't
right.
have time to put into deepening that part of my practice. So I'll go to the people who are really good at it, and it's worth the money that I have spent talking to professional astrologers. I've gotten some amazing insights from those conversations. It takes 3 years to get the third degree. It takes 4 years roughly to get your college degree. It takes years of practice to become good at astrology or
Yeah.
any of these other technologies. Some of the more shamanistic work, it takes years of practice to get good at not just getting into trance, but also being able to lead trance states and to journey with someone when they're in a trance state so that you can help them work through whatever needs to be done there. Can you pick up a spell book and I've never done this before and I'm going to cast this one because it looks good and have it work? Absolutely. That's the origin story of so many of us. Think, holy shit, that worked. Is a great origin story. But then getting it to work consistently is a practice.
So, what advice would you give to someone who feels called to explore Wicca or witchcraft, but feels overwhelmed or unsure where to begin?
I started with I read a book. And I would say that if you pick up a book, then it has gone through its people have reviewed it. There's been some editing. It's been published in the real world. And you are more likely to have more credible information. And not everyone has a local library or can leverage interlibrary loan to get awesome books. People from all over are going to listen to your podcast. But certainly my journey began with a really strong interest in mythology and reading a lot of books on mythology. So when I ran across it when I was in my Wiccan training, it was familiar. I have a list of books that I sent to you.
Yes, those will definitely be in the show notes. I hear drawing down the moon so many times.
So drawing down the moon is more like here's all the different things with different pagan paths that you can explore. And it's broader book, the traditional Wicca. It's more Wicca oriented. For folks who are more interested in the psychic, but also witchy, is why I recommended Psychic Witch.
I love it.
The Four Elements of the Wise is fantastic for the basics of elemental magic and understanding why we use the elements as the underpinning for so much of our symbolism, and they're really tying those things together. And then the Wicca for the Solitary Practitioner by Scott Cunningham has stood the test of time. It's
Okay.
still published. It's still out there. It's been in continuous publication since the 70s. I don't remember when he wrote it, but it's been out there a long time. And it's an incredibly useful text. The
And I
other advice that I would give is if you're fortunate enough to have any kind of a local pagan store, then show up and buy your stuff there instead of on Amazon. Any kind of small businesses, buy local really matters. Go to your local bookstore. If you have to buy online, then yeah, buy online. But try the local stuff first. And when you're talking to the local shop owner, Jacqueline at Oak Lawn Enchantments, these are people who have been around the community for a long time. And having the store is part of their way of giving back. If you're in Seattle, it's Edge of the Circle Books down in the U District. And Robert's an amazing resource. And they know what events are going on. And they've got other people who come in and chat. And they know which covens are saying, hey, we're looking for students now. So just talk to those local bookshop owners. That's another really good way to find your way in. And if you're going to a public event for the first time, bring a buddy with you. Bring someone else who's also interested or just someone who has your back because there's creepy people in the world and don't be stupid. But there's also amazing opportunities in the world and be open to finding those amazing opportunities.
So the last question I have for you is, since we're in this October and this is a special October podcast theme, October's often seen as that witchy month. From a Wiccan perspective, what makes this season so powerful?
People actually want to talk to us, and good, bad, or indifferent, we're front and foremost and we're in the news. And usually that's fun. So I don't know if you're in the Pacific Northwest or where your folks are at. But like next weekend in Coopville on Whidbey Island, they're doing Practically Magic in a whole month because Practical Magic was partially, the original one was partially filmed in Coopville, and they're doing a witch's walk. And so there's just so many opportunities to put your hat on and step out in public in ways that you don't have to be worried. And I mean, you work within your coven with your own little group, even if it's you and three or four friends that get together. When you're able to show up for these public events that are framed in ways like, oh, practically magic, you can show up without everyone going, oh, she's really a witch, but you can see the other people who are really witches. They're there too. And so it's an opportunity to meet other people in the community. There are pagan festivals all over the country, and I really enjoy going to them. A festival is normally an outdoor event, a sacred space, held in a hotel in Maryland in February is an amazing event. I've attended a lot of them. And we've got Sickle is coming up in November in the Seattle area. There's Spirit Northwest coming up in Portland in April. Those are the ones that I plan on attending. And I do hope to go back to the East Coast because I lived there for 5 years. And I do want to attend my favorite festival from when I lived there that's in February.
Awesome.
Um, so we can be witchy in any month, but oh, it is so much fun and so easy right now to be witchy in October. That's what makes it powerful is the networking, the connections, the feeling like you're part of a community and you're not alone.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. This was so much fun, Tabitha. It's always so much fun to speak with you. And I know you said that you have students that are on the way from graduation. So if anybody wants to get a hold of you and see when you're accepting new students, we will put your email and ways to contact you in the show notes. And you're such a wealth of knowledge with, I'm sure, a lot of things, but in particular, this subject. So thank you so much for being on the podcast.
I do expect that I'll be teaching runes next,
Mm,
starting in January,
okay.
because I got to get through the current cycle. And I'm really looking forward to that. And then there's a lot of communities around the country. So for everyone listening, good luck finding your own community and or establishing your own practice. And it's okay to start with, I read a book and to be there for a while because there's just so much amazing information out there.
Mhm.
Just, use a grain of salt and a little bit of discernment, and that goes a long way. Blessed be.
Thank you, Tabitha.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review so that we can connect with more people to develop our mind, body, and spirit.